Just to add one line on the climate finance matter, the question was raised whether mitigation is being dealt with or not. It deals with the mitigation, all right, but it also looks at adaptation and resilience. I think now the debate on climate finance is also moving much more into resilience, whether it is infrastructure or planning for it or funding. Resilience takes precedence. That is one. And second, country-specific solutions are now going to be possible. It's not going to be one size fits all. The problem of each country, particularly on climate, is so different from one another. So this Delhi Declaration and also the discussions which were held during India presidency has focused on that. And thirdly, pricing and non-pricing tools are also now available for countries to adopt. It is not just going to be price it if it is carbon intensive and forget the others. Countries do demand pricing as one of the tools, but non-pricing solutions are also going to be a lot more friendlier to countries with different carbon emission levels. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open there's a lady here. Yeah, please. It's okay. No. Ma'am, the microphone's already there. Yeah, go ahead, ma'am. You have the microphone.
Hello. Yeah. Good evening to the panel. This is Priyashmita. I'm from Informist Media. My question is directed to ma'am. That is, now that there is a global acceptance of the fact, or at least a G20 acceptance of the fact regarding food and energy security, what is the immediate ramification on inflation and growth forecast, both domestically and globally, that you see? Thank you.
Well, globally, I think it will have... Oh, sorry.
Ma'am, we can take questions together.
Okay.
Yeah, gentleman there. Yeah, you. The gentleman there who's put his hand up, if you could give the microphone to him. Yeah, thank you. No, not him, not him. I'll come to you, sir. I'll come to you in a minute. Person in front of you. Hold on there at the back. Yes, sir, you go ahead. You had the floor.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, not you, sir. Okay, since you have the microphone, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want to waste time. Go ahead.
Hi, Stephen Borwick of Nikkei Asia. My question is for Foreign Minister Jaishankar. Is today's achievement a step towards achieving what India has described as a world of greater multi-alignment, as opposed to the more old-fashioned sense of an international rules-based order? Thank you.
Yes, sir. You had the microphone. Go ahead. Is the microphone on?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I just wanted Mr. Minister Jaishankar.
Please introduce yourself.
Dr. Wail Awad from Sana, correspondent in India. Mr. Jaishankar, Honorable Minister, when you talked of the counter-terrorism measure, how serious was the members of the G20 and fighting terrorism together? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You had a hand up quite some time. Yes, you right here, second row.
Samira Hussain with BBC News. I want to go back to Russia, and if you look at the language that was used in Bali, and you look at the language that was used now, gone is any reference to Russia and its aggression. Were those concessions made in order to get Russia to sign on, and do you think the weight of this has been watered down, and does that take away from its importance, especially when you're talking about fuel and food security?
Yes, you. Yeah. Right in front. No, ahead of him, please. I saw his hand. Yes, you. Please, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, sir, Rishikesh from the Press Trust of India. Everyone must surprised by this outcome.
My question is that the personal bonding of PM Modi with President Biden and Russian President Putin, what was their contribution to bring this declaration? And did you have one question or two questions?
One more. There was a lady, gentleman there. Yeah, sitting there. Yeah, behind you. Yeah, Pranay, go ahead.
सर प्रणय उपाध्याय हूँ जी न्यूज से मेरा सवाल इस
I'm
चीज को
from
लेकर है कि
Z News. My question is this, that the inclusion of African Union in G20, it has been done in a record time, because in June, the Prime Minister wrote a letter, and African Union is a part of it in the G20. How much India has invested in its lobbying? What endeavors India has made in this direction?
Maybe Finance Minister would like to.
On the inflation question, globally, of course, it's going to have an impact the moment it is executed. The understanding is executed and the grain movements start from Russia and from Ukraine. So, particularly countries which have been hard-pressed, which have originally and for a very long time depended on grains coming from these two countries, are now waiting to have that back again. As a result, I think it will cool off inflation, particularly in food grains. Domestically, we've had very little grains coming in. Except for edible oil, particularly sunflower oil, our imports have not been so much dependent on these countries. There are times when we've brought in extra edible oil, and therefore to that extent, yes, it will certainly have an impact on domestic inflation as well. But largely, India's domestic inflation is affected by vagaries of the monsoon or supply-side problems. Global impact is not as much as countries which are outside dependent on grains coming completely for their consumption from outside.
If I could respond to the question whether this is a world of monthly alignment. I mean, first of all, when we are talking about G20, let us remember that this is a forum for international economic cooperation. Its primary focus is on economic growth and development. And in a way, the G20 itself is a reflection of multipolarity. The fact that there was, in a way, the salience of G7 was a decade ago replaced by the salience of the G20. I think that itself was a statement. Now, what you see before you in terms of the leaders' declaration and the discussions that are going on are obviously discussions among a very broad, very diverse range of countries at different levels of economic development, whose economic and social, cultural composition is quite different from each other. So I think in that sense it's quite reasonable to assume that there is a certain there's a spectrum of views and interests out here which we have tried to harmonize to produce the declaration. The question on counter-terrorism, what happens? I would draw your attention to paragraphs 74 and 75 of the Leaders' Declaration. 75 speaks about the role of the FATF because clearly the financing of terrorism is a very strong concern which the entire international community, not just the G20, shares. The 74 deals with illicit trafficking and diversion of small arms and light weapons. So I think these are concerns. So within the G20, I think these conversations are quite helpful. But obviously in terms of policy action, they will be carried into their particular mechanisms and forums which focus on the issue. With regard to the to the comparison with the Bali declaration, I would only say Bali was Bali and New Delhi is New Delhi. I mean, Bali was a year ago. The context, the situation was different. Many things have happened since then, and in fact, if you see in the geopolitical segment of the Leaders' Declaration, there are in totality 8 paragraphs, 7 of which actually focus on the Ukraine issue, and many of them highlight problems which are of great contemporary significance. I mean, including the efforts of the Istanbul agreements, the concerns about unimpeded deliveries of grain, foodstuff and fertilizers, the issues of attacks on the relevant infrastructure. So I think it's, one should not have a theological view of this. I think the New Delhi Declaration responds to the situation and concerns as it is today, just as the Bali Declaration did in a situation which was there a year ago. And finally, with regard to the
your question was about PM's personal bonding.
Today, in fact, not just today, yesterday, and in some cases at the Jakarta East Asia Summit as well, where the Prime Minister was there. Prime Minister did speak to a number of his counterparts with regard to what was under discussion at this summit. It is the responsibility of the Sherpa and of the ministers to put together the multiple strands and harmonize it into a document. But at the end of the day, I obviously do not want to go into very specific details, but at the end of the day, there are always gaps and issues and viewpoints. And I think today, especially Prime Minister's talking to a number of leaders during the day, his meetings yesterday with some of them, with others, during the Jakarta meeting of the ES, I think were all very, very influential, or I would say almost determining in producing an outcome. The
last question that you asked about African Union's union, the momentum was very quick. I would like to remind you that during Bali summit and at the end of the Bali summit, the president of African Union was the president of Senegal. At that time, the Prime Minister went to Indonesian president, and his complaint was about the membership of G20. The right of African Union was not discussed during the course of the meeting. The Prime Minister assured him at that point in time that under G20 presidency it will certainly be done, and this is the guarantee of Modi, and you have seen that he has delivered this assurance that he had made. And during BRICS summit, the Magnus, the then president, came to the Prime Minister and said that you had he reminded him that you had assured us and you really impacted it.
Bali, the president of Senegal, Macky Sall, all right, that was interpreted. Thank you very much.